27 minutes after the hour now. Mark Steyn has been doing some very insightful instant analysis with Tucker all week long and throughout the channel. And we're just trying to piece together who this is. And you were actually on the night when when the sheriff came out and kind of just had a fit of a stream of consciousness about what could have happened and was he acting alone. Where do you think this whole thing is heading?
Well, I think there's nothing accidental about this. The fact that he was scoping out locations in Chicago and Boston. This is not a guy who snapped. This is a meticulous man who has had this in mind for months. It's interesting to me. His behavior is much closer to that of a contract killer than of some wacko who snaps. In other words, this is professionally planned and things go wrong along the way and he adapts. But in the end, he reaches a target and he succeeds in pulling something off.
And you know what, Mark, to your point with the contract killer, you know, that's not a suicide thing. He planned to get away. And perhaps that's why the new news is 50 pounds of tannerite in his car. That's the same explosive the bomber here in New York used and in Chelsea to make those pressure cookers. Absolutely.
And to me, the other thing is that's interesting about this, Steve, is that there's nothing, I don't think anything is coincidental about this. You know, in some strange way, it's a bit like Agatha Christie, Murder on the Orient Express. A plot spoiler, they all did it, and all the explanations could be correct. It could be both some kind of complex psychological relationship with his father, who was a career criminal. It might even be that ISIS is correct, and he'd sent an email to somebody saying, "I'm going to do this for you guys." The thing is, this guy is so unlike all the other characters that actually you have to really throw away the standard playbook on these.
Where do you fall in the gun control debate? Because that's where it always goes after something like this happens. Because, of course, no one wants this to happen. No one wants this to happen again. And yesterday there seemed to be some agreement on this bump stock that he used on apparently 12 of the guns that allows you to shoot basically as many people as possible within a matter of minutes.
Well, you know, Abby, I mean, this is one of the things I find slightly ridiculous about those of us in the media. None of us had ever heard of a bump stock a week ago.
And now we say
and
like
now we're all
nature.
bump stock, bump stock, bump stock.
Us and lawmakers.
Yeah, and lawmakers as well. And as I understand it, this was something that the Obama administration approved because it was supposed to help disable people. Right. So in other words, we can ban bump stocks, and something that is supposed to do something else entirely will be the problem in 2 years' time. What's interesting to me about Democrats is they have the First Amendment and the Second Amendment kind of exist and support each other. But Democrats' biggest victory after one of these mass shootings was after the church shooting, where they succeeded basically in getting the Confederate flag ruled verboten and mothballed and gone. And they're much more successful in their assaults on freedom of expression, because that's a kind of abstract concept, than they are on gun rights. And I would reckon that's the way to go for them.
You know, Mark, Democrats responded, as many would expect them to call for more legislation. But Republicans have responded in a way it's like, you know what, maybe we should do something and we just had a congressman on who wants to write a bill, but at least regulate who can use those things, which is new for Republicans.
Yeah, but Republicans tend to get forced into concessions on these things because they feel vulnerable. And really the politics of this is for example, in the Democrat Party, the glamorous romantic figure on the Democrat side is Bernie Sanders, who comes from a state with one of the most liberal set of gun laws, which he has always supported. And there's all kinds of guys with all kinds of guns in the broken down northeast kingdom of Vermont, as they call it, poorest part of the state. They all vote Bernie. They all love their guns, and he's not going to mess with them.
Well, that's true. And I would say this. I think that if you look at a situation, first we hear got to do better on background checks. Then we hear mental health. Well, he had no mental health issues, and the background checks were indeed passed. Then some say, wait a second, should you be going to a gun store and saying, this is your 27th gun, Mr. Steyn? Well, can I ask you what you're doing with that? And especially on the radio, people will call up and say, wait a second, that means you're talking about National Registry. Why do I know that you bought 27 guns? What are you trying to do with that?
Right, and I think, and the other lesson of this, Brian, is that I would say generally American legal scrutiny always has too many false positives. You know, so it's like at the airport where it's the little old lady with the leg caliper who they have to dismantle and take apart, or it's the pumpkin pie mix just before Thanksgiving that could be weaponized. You're going to have all. I'm being serious here, Steve. What you want is laws that are narrowly drawn that strike the people they're intended to strike. And here we tend to kind of just come up with things that drag too many peripheral people.
I had a special ops guy just write me and say, yeah, we get those same devices, only a bit more sophisticated, and no one uses them because we can shoot almost as fast, almost as much, and we can do much more accurate. You lose almost all accuracy.
That's right. Them. That's right. And the whole thing heats up, and and can jam when you use.
And he had a bunch of jam guns.
Yeah, and he had a bunch of jam guns. So this whole bump stock fever might be nothing other than something particular to this one guy in this one situation.
Very interesting. Yeah, well, as you said, most of us are learning about it for the first time last night or this morning. Mark Steyn, always good to have you on.
Hey, good.
You've had a busy week.
Yeah, and you did a much better job interviewing your dad than my daughter would have done.
I don't know. We haven't seen that interview yet, though. No. I look forward to that one. Thanks,
Mark will tweet out later who he likes better, Fox and Friends or Tucker.
Yeah.
You promise?
Careful.
Yeah, I will. I will. I'm thinking about that one. I might have to go away for a long time.
Tucker's a good guy. That's a tough one.